Welcome to the After Dark podcast with Anthony James and Konrad. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
Hello, and welcome to the After Dark podcast. I'm Anthony James, and that's Konrad.
Hello!
That's him. Well, Konrad, how are you this week?
I'm very well. I'm back among the dark and loving it.
Back among the dark, yeah. So you've had your week break, and now you are back amongst the thick of it, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, what did you think? Well, obviously, we're going to go through the episode bit by bit. You know we are, but
it's a quick episode. It was great.
Yeah.
See you next week.
See you next week. Yeah, it was all right. It was all right. I just want to point out. I know I'm sort of preempting the end of season 3 Theory Matrix, but I do want to say that if you all remember correctly, there's been a few times in this podcast already where Konrad has said things like, for example, in episode 5 of the podcast, episode 5 of season 1 as well. Konrad said, whenever I pointed out to him that Jonas was Marta's nephew, Konrad said, yeah, I don't want to get into that. I don't think the show's going to go that way. We all know where the show went. Now, this time, he actually said, I think it was the last episode in the Theory Matrix. He actually said, yeah, I think there'll be, maybe Alt Marta, maybe Alt Claudia, but I don't think, maybe Alt Jonas, but I don't think they're going to get into too much of the alt world.
What? I said I would like them to, but I didn't think they would have time to do it, which I stand by, because I do not know how the hell they're rounding things off with what at the end of Play Today is going to be 7 episodes of television remaining.
Yeah. Well, you'll just have to wait and see. As I said to Konrad just before we started recording, this season 3 is like a freight train, just chugging on down the track, So we'll wait and see if Konrad thinks if it stayed on the track or did it fall off. I'm really, really looking forward to that. Well, guys, could you please make sure, we're going to get right into it because we've got a lot to talk about, but I'm going to say, can you please make sure you subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on audio apps. If you want to leave comments about episode 2 of season 3, leave them below. Could you also, if you want to send us a message or some praise, some criticism, anything at all, could you please send us an email to adpodmail@gmail.com. That's adpodmail@gmail.com. If you're listening on the audio apps, that's a great way to send a question in. We will check it every week just to make sure we cover everyone. Right. What do you think, Konrad? Do you want to get into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, let's break it down!
The season opens with Adam's lair going bye-bye.
Yes.
So the Sigmundus lair is being burnt by an anonymous trio. What do you think about this scene? Well,
so first off, we open with a Schopenhauer quote, which I very much enjoyed.
I skipped that, yeah.
No, I'm with you. Normally, when like the philosophy stuff comes up, I tend to be like, I'm too dumb to understand this, so I'm just going to nod sagely and ignore it. Yeah. But I know a little bit about Schopenhauer. And I know that he advocated for kind of like self-discipline in the face of our like human desires, to basically say like human desires like kind of form the basis of like an irrational and chaotic world. So we need to kind of like rage against them to essentially overcome what he saw as like a fundamentally painful human condition, which sounds an awful lot like what Adam advocates for, basically saying that no, human desire leads to chaos, and the way to fix the world is to get as far away from that humanity and the human condition as possible. In Adam's case, by blowing everything up, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. Yeah, I think that actually parallels really nicely with I know Adam's story it parallels perfectly with, as you mentioned, but even a whole load of stuff like temptation is one of the things in this show, like even Ulrich as well in this episode, we'll get into it later, but the fact that even in his alternate world, he still is falling to temptation time and time again.
I've got things to say about the moralizing that happens in this episode. Don't you worry about that. But so to go back to your original question or your original point, these 3 individuals who I've dubbed the cleanup crew, CUC, they rule. I love them in this episode. I love how Dark, just when you think that Dark can't really one-up itself in terms of how it introduces and presents its villains, because, obviously with Noah, you had the great kind of like Noah's kind of droning theme that accompanied him every time he turned up. And then these guys have their own like distinct, deep kind of the double strike of the piano note, just down, down. And the way they kind of like walk in formation, there's this sort of inexorable, unstoppable, and like immediately threatening quality to all of them, which is, I don't think, do they say anything in the first scene? I don't think they even say anything.
Yeah, they say only when they're in with Burnt later on. Yeah.
But this is kind of like, okay, we've got our bad guys for the season. Then like these guys, they don't seem like good guys to me.
Yeah, what's your obviously the whole Sic Mundus is gone now. I can't remember if they showed us a date at the start of this. I don't think they did actually. So you don't really know when this is.
No, not this one. You when you see them later, you do get a date.
Yeah.
So my first thought, and it kind of contributed to one of my main theories coming out this episode, is that these guys are literally like a cleanup crew for Sic Mundus. Like they're basically going in and tying up all the loose ends that might help someone to get knowledge about time travel. So they're burning all of the Sic Mundus stuff. They're bumping off characters who even have a little bit of knowledge about the God particle. They're basically just cleaning house, which is awesome as a threat to kind of like an existential threat to the characters that we know and love.
Yeah, and it's also a great thematic thing in terms of tying a show up in the third season. Just like
yeah, exactly.
Anything they want rid of, is like, get these guys around.
Yeah, yeah, we'll sort them out. Don't worry, we'll send the cleanup crew in. But yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts on these three, particularly the kid, but all like the kid and the middle guy are amazing, and I very much enjoyed them throughout this episode.
Okay, awesome. Right, so after that we get the moments after the apocalypse from the end of season 2, and Jonas and Alt Marta, who we can call Marta now because the other one's dead. So we'll say Jonas and Marta. They appear in the cave in what we assume is the Alt world, and against every single person's theory before this season came out, Marta travels away straight away again.
Yeah. So she's my kind of feelings about her are that it seems like the latest in a long line of characters who are preserving the timeline that has come before them by ensuring certain characters do certain things to ensure that they themselves are in a position to fix things. So we've seen this with the Stranger twice, and we've seen it with Noah. And she seems like she's another character in that vein where she's like, I'll be the one to fix this. You just need to make sure you meet me, which I've got thoughts on as well, because that doesn't make sense. The whole, like, him meeting her already, how does that work? Because none of the other Jonases have met this Marta by the way they react to her. So, yeah. Thoughts on that as well later. But yeah, that was my first kind of thought of her character in terms of what her motivations are. But I wonder if she will be as equally, I don't want to say inept, that sounds harsh, but unsuccessful in her goal, pursuing her goals as the other characters who've kind of embodied this single-mindedness have been.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And even the fact that you have only started watching the third season now, it's the first time that I've properly got to talk to someone in real life who isn't my wife Emma about the third season. So I think to myself, it's interesting you even picking up on things, like I'm questioning things that for some reason I don't even pick, like the idea you're thinking, well, the other Jonases don't even know anything about her, so how did she already meet him? Like that's sort of like almost bringing back that idea of a cycle again. I was interested to hear you say that, and I'm interested to see as we go through, because obviously I've watched this series less than the others, so I'm interested to see as we go through if you pick up any more of these little questions for the future / what the hells that I personally don't think about because I just know the story now, and I haven't really picked the third season apart as much as I have the others.
Yeah, I can't wait to break some of this stuff down because, the possibilities, as I kind of suspected they would be, are pretty wide open in this episode. Yeah,
very much so. Right, so they've gone back to not showing the name of the episode again. So they don't show the name of the episode in this episode either, so you can imagine it's going to go for the season. So I Oh, this episode's called Deja Vu. So I don't
It's called
think,
Deja Vu. It's the same in German.
I don't think there's any point in trying to say what it, pronounce it or
Score a
whatever.
point for Konrad. Thank you very much.
Deja Vu. Anyway, so it starts off with a really interesting design of like a typography with all the backwards letters and it seems like it's all backwards, but actually they're in the right order. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the 4th of November 2019. What did you take from this like mirroring of the words?
So I didn't realize quite how literal it was going to be until we really got into it. I thought, we're going to an alternate reality. We're going to see some things that are different, but ultimately it will resemble the reality we know. And I guess that is still kind of the case. But the sort of there's like obviously like the kind of thematic and character mirrors that are drawn very obviously in this episode, with characters sort of changing places and changing attributes and personalities. But there's also just like the presentational mirroring, which is I don't know how they did it in this episode, because literally like sets are mirrored in this episode. I don't know if they broke down the sets and rebuilt them, or they shot it and mirrored it and just didn't put any writing in it, so it wasn't obvious they mirrored it. But it's incredible.
That second thing you said is true. Although, they actually, everything they shot in the alternate world is all just shot normally, and then every image is mirrored. And that even all the sets, when they had words on the walls, like in the school, for example, like the staff room and everything, all of those words were backwards on the set.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's very smart then. Like, it's probably quicker to do that.
And they even went as far as to get characters to open the door with their left hand.
Oh, okay.
So when they mirrored it would be right hand. What's really interesting as well is the first time I watched it, I picked up on the sets being mirrored, and I was thinking, did they literally build those again? But then once you start realizing it, every character looks a little strange.
Yeah,
and it's because they are literally being mirrored.
The reverse, yeah.
So
and the way it's shot as well, like it just, the amount of craft that goes into being like, okay, Jonas cycled towards the camera here and took a left turn, so Marta is going to cycle away from the camera and take a right turn, and it's just like to structure. Because those aren't just like random. We'll probably get to them a bit later as they happen, but those aren't just like random camera shots.
Yeah.
Like they chose to have Jonas cycle towards the camera because it brings him into frame. It brings him into the viewer's mind. So to make the decision to reverse that, it has consequences in how the audience perceive that shot, and to commit to doing that and still make it work from kind of like a pacing and a general feel perspective is so difficult. I couldn't believe that they actually committed to doing that as completely as they did, to be honest.
Yeah, it's you can just really tell, like, the word auteur comes to mind. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Jon Jeffries and Baron Bodor are so committed to making a piece of art, and that's what makes this show so impressive, because it's such a well-written show. It's so out of the box and mental, but at the same time, it's tied together by people who really just seem to want to make the best art possible.
Yeah.
It's really great. I would also say that something I noticed. You could go back and look. They say like a perfectly symmetrical face. There's some people have them. Like I think George Clooney's face is very symmetrical. One thing I noticed, there's a few characters in this that don't have the little odd look to them. Because like Hannah has a little odd look to her in this for me, because it's mirrored, and I noticed it on Hannah more, maybe just because she's a bit more dressed down because she's pregnant and stuff, but I noticed it on her, whereas Katarina to me looked exactly the same, so she must be straight down the middle, you know what I mean, symmetrical. Something I found interesting.
Yeah, I think there is definitely. It's interesting you say that, because I didn't really. Not that I didn't notice it, but I probably didn't kind of put two and two together and figure out what it was that I thought was weird about some of those characters. Like Ulrich looked really weird to me, and obviously he dyed his hair as well, which didn't help. But he was like Dennis in that episode of It's Always Sunny, where like he dyes his hair like pitch black to try and prevent himself from aging. But now that you mention it, that totally stands out. But yeah, the mirroring, and we didn't really mention it, but having old Marta, or Eve, I guess, as I'm going to dub her until I get evidence to the contrary, doing the same voiceover that Adam did in an episode at the beginning of, I think it was early on in season 2. I can't remember exactly when it was, but if you knew how everything was going to turn out, would you do it the same way again? There's just this like really, really like staggering commitment to the theme of this episode in it mirroring the real world, and it starts in the first scene and it just carries on. It starts in the second scene, I guess, because the cleanup crew guys are just off burning things. But
and you would assume that that's in the original world as well, because we actually have later on that's where they are. And that you get a transition, a really smart transition actually, like of it kind of like sucking in and pushing back out again to say which is a really, really clever way of doing it, rather than having like a time and date card to just say, we're in this world now, and it's really smart how that they basically they trust their audience enough to understand what that means without needing to explain anything. It's just like, it's distinct enough that they trust that their audience will recognize, oh, that was a weird scene transition, that must mean we're back in the real world or something like that. But and one thing I'll mention about the scene transitions now up front is I like sometimes it's almost like it's something like breathing, like watching them. It's like, and there was a time, I think it's in the Charlotte Ulrich scene in the evidence room, where it's like, and then it goes to pull back and it sort of fails and then it goes again. I love that. But so there's so much to that. I will say, just before we go on, there's the idea of the mirroring is something that a lot of people miss, to be honest with you. I know they noticed the mirroring of the sets and stuff, but in terms of mirroring the camera, it was a huge a lot of people started coming on the subreddit and being like, did anyone else notice that that Alt Marta's scar is on a different side of her face depending if she's in the original world compared to the alternate world? And it's like, well, it makes complete sense, because they're literally flipping the image, in the alternate one.
And it's, I guess it's one of those things where, like, if you focus on the images that you're presented, you'll notice that stuff, but it's easy to miss as well. Like it's but that kind of sense of verisimilitude and like being immersed in what they're presenting you is good in and of itself. Like, you don't want, it's kind of, this is getting off topic slightly, but it's why I sometimes have a problem with like some directors who get famous for doing really long single takes, because they feel a bit like masturbatory to me sometimes, and they kind of take me out of the immersion of the film. Like, I can go, oh, that's really difficult, but you have also kind of reminded me I'm watching a film, rather than let me be immersed in the story because you've shown me this really impressive technical thing you've done. But I never felt that with this. I never felt like they were kind of jacking themselves off at how clever they're being. It always kind of happened within the context of within a believable context of the story they were telling. And
anytime they do a single take, it is really dynamic and moving, like like the original Nielsen around the table. But also, you said that, it's really interesting. I just thought in my head, maybe the reason why you're taken out of those scenes is because if you think about it, those really long takes, like I'm thinking of there's a film called Hunger about the Irish hunger strikes, and there's a big long, like 16-minute scene between Liam Cunningham and Michael Fassbender, and it's literally just one shot, side of a table for 16 minutes of a dialogue scene. And I know what you mean, because it's almost like it's using sort of play, like live play techniques. But when you go see a play, you're never thinking, you always know you're watching a play. Whereas if you're using those techniques in a film, I understand why it would take you out of the film, because, it's not like dynamic and keeping you in. It's like you're sitting watching a play, and then you just realize, oh, I'm actually sitting in my living room watching a play. I completely get it.
I mean, it can work in films. I don't want to say like I hate every one take, but they need to be used sparingly, and some directors don't do that. It's like Guy Ritchie's like quick, and Edgar Wright's like like in Snatch, how Guy Ritchie does the transitions, and like the really quick editing on there.
Like they snap a load of things together quickly and then transition. A load of directors started doing that. It's just like that. It's not as ubiquitous as that, but it's definitely like that. All right. Anyway, so I think we can cross a theory off your Matrix here. Because next up, we get Marta waking up in Jonas's bedroom.
Yeah.
In a very similar way to we saw Jonas wake up at the start of season 1.
Yeah, I did. It took me to the end of the episode because I wanted to be 100% sure, but I was pretty sure that I can tick off that alternate Martyr is the Jonas of this timeline based on how this is presented, and I love the kind of blending of timelines here. Like, it's so well done. So like, you've got her waking up in bed, like you say, but then you've got this slow kind of reveal of weird stuff going on. So you've got, If I Could Turn Back Time playing on the radio, which is an 80s song, and it's a bit like, oh, that's a bit weird, but maybe Katarina's just listening to, some golden oldies on the radio. And then Mikkel is on like quite a futuristic looking tablet, which is like, okay, so this is definitely still 2019.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to also, If I Could Turn Back Time. There might be some subtext to that song choice. But then it cuts to Magnus and Franziska upstairs, and Magnus has got a Motley Crue tattoo on his chest and has rats written in tape on his window, which, I am a big fan of grunge and hair metal era Magnus' look. Yeah. But also, it confirms, and it goes on throughout this episode, this weird... It's almost kind of like stereotypes, not in a bad way, but it's kind of pulling all these really distinct styles from all the different periods that they've depicted in the real timeline and just blending them all in together in this really, really striking way.
Yeah, like it's really, really good. I loved Magnus. Like you saying recently that you thought that it would be funny. You couldn't wait to see Magnus with a mustache or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't think they'd actually do it. Just his grunge Magnus with black hair and a Motley Crue tattoo. I was like, yes,
yeah, that's it.
I can't believe it. And we got Peter. Well, I don't want to jump the gun, but holy shit, Peter Doppler without a goatee blew my mind.
Yeah, that took away some of the weirdness mirroring for him because it was like, what?
Yeah.
But so throughout the episode, we'll point out things that are mirrors to the first ever episode as well as the first few episodes. Because in this episode, they very much were trying to mirror / have a bit of deja vu with...
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
With the first episode. So for me, Franziska being upstairs, getting it on with Magnus and then escaping out the window.
Yeah.
That's very much Ulrich and Hannah from the first season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I by the end of this episode, I'm not sure, I'm not confident how much to read into the mirrors or the lines of comparison they're drawing. So in the case of Magnus and Franziska, are we to understand that they are kind of like Ulrich and Hannah's characters as they were in 2019, or is it just drawing those kind of visual lines and saying these things happened and they're also happening here but with slightly different characters? A good example, and we'll get to later, is Peter Doppler. He doesn't seem like the knower, but obviously he occupies that position of a priest. So
yeah, I think I know what you mean, and at this point for me, I was very much not reading into that too much. I was very much thinking like it's more of a filmmaking stylistic thematic thing.
Yeah, it's just kind of like setting the scene and being like, remember all these things.
Yeah, and it properly does make you feel deja vu. Well, it does make you feel real deja vu, but it makes you feel like reminiscent of that episode back in the day. Yeah. Now, obviously, that wasn't. Now, actually, we'll take it before we go on to the next scene. There's a few things I wanted to mention here. First thing is, someone legitimately asked me on one of my videos. It was the 25 unanswered questions video. Someone asked me in the comment section, why is Mikkel older in the alternate world?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely... I was going to say this. The alternate world gives them a nice little get around both Mikkel and Ellie hitting puberty, because both of those characters are a lot taller in this season than they were in the last one.
That's true. I didn't know how to answer that. So there's two answers for you. First answer, the actor got older.
Yeah.
Second answer, which I think is my favorite. I actually looked up because obviously we're imagining now that the characters are genetically identical, right?
Yeah.
Well, I looked it up. Identical twins who have the same DNA actually they actually can go into puberty at different times.
Okay.
Yep. So
they could have just hit puberty at a different time in their life.
Yeah. So if you're the type of person who does get annoyed by seeing an older actor when they're meant to be 2 years younger, well, there you go. They could have hit puberty earlier.
We just never cast child actors in anything, so they can't be trusted.
Yeah. Well, they used Mickle very sparingly here.
Yeah, they did. Like when he stood up, I was like, "Oh, Mickle's like 6'5" now."
The ironic thing is, he seems to be growing into Michael very well.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, there'll be no doubt about the comparisons. Like in a couple of months' time, when he has a full like stubble.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I personally, I was just like, oh, the alternate world thing is a good way to get around that. Like, they're just older, I guess, in this reality. Like, there's no reason why they couldn't be a year older, I guess.
Exactly. There's no reason why in the alternate world, that little genetic material in the sperm and in the egg, that happened a year before. Like, there's no, because everything's happening different. If you're imagining that they are, like, everything's happening slightly...
Jonas literally wasn't born in this world. Why couldn't Mikkel have been born a couple of years earlier or something
exactly,
like that?
Yeah. You're exactly right. Because you would have to believe, in order to not think that the sperm and egg could happen at a different time, you would have to believe that everything in this world happened the same as the other world up to a certain point, which is nonsense. Right, okay, so then we get the Hannah and Ulrich scene. And there was definitely some symmetry here with whenever Ulrich came back to the family in episode 1, season 1, with the bread in his sweaty joggers. So we sort of find out at the end of this episode, or throughout the episode, that maybe instead of going and being with Hannah in the morning in this world, he was going and being with someone else.
Yeah, and it's vaguely heartbreaking, even though Hannah has she's not done her case any good throughout this series. But it is kind of heartbreaking to see a reality where Ulrich and Hannah actually get together, and even in a reality where they are together, doesn't actually change their relationship. It's still fundamentally broken. Like, Ulrich will still have a wandering eye for other women, and Hannah will still be that kind of bundle of insecurities, and things will play out in effectively the same way. They won't end up together, I suspect. And the main thing for this storyline that stood out to me actually was obviously alternate timeline, but it feels like it might be signposting that I was potentially onto something with my theory that Hannah might get pregnant in the 50s in the real world, because obviously she's about the same age here, she's a year younger, and here she is perfectly able to have children. So maybe there is maybe she hasn't gone through menopause yet, and she's still able to have kids in the 50s.
Well, you would think that, because they are genetically identical. Although puberty can happen different times, so maybe menopause can too.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, this is absolutely mirrored. Everything down to the finding the hair on the jumper, like it's all, and her saying, well, the only thing that's not mirrored, actually, funnily enough, or is it mirrored? I guess it is kind of mirrored. It's mirrored in a different direction though. It's her saying she loves him and him saying you're beautiful, which is
that's
a real sucker punch.
Yeah, that wasn't a mirror. It was actually exactly the same. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but like most of it is mirroring Katerina and Ulrich's relationship. Yeah. But then that's literally mirroring hers and Ulrich's relationship. So some things never change, unfortunately.
Some things never change. You know me. Do you have a theory about the baby inside her pregnant belly?
I mean, she looks very far gone. She is about ready to burst. I haven't got a theory, but I'll tell you what, I'll pluck one out of the air.
Oh, jeez, don't do this.
No, it's fine. Who's it going to be? Well, we haven't got an origin for Peter Doppler yet, and I was theorising that maybe it'd be one of Hannah's kids in the 50s who had become Peter Doppler, because Helga doesn't seem like the kind to have kids. But maybe this will become Peter Doppler. This one an alternate reality, and then he'll get taken to the 20s. No, taken to the 1880s.
So are you going to
say pop it in the Matrix?
Okay, pop it in. We need theories, guys. Come on. I'm going to prod these all the way along. We need theories for this show. We need them. All right. I should actually just say right now, thanks very much for all the input, all the sort of discussion and stuff in the comments of the Theory Matrix episode. It seems like between season 1 and season 2, we've picked up a lot more of the hardcore fans who want to, talk to us about the Theory Matrix and stuff, and not just listen to our talk about the episodes, which is great. I love that. So there was even like 60 people who actually went and looked at our Theory Matrix pictures.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, so
Great.
Unbelievable. So can't wait for season 3. Okay, so then we get all the mirrored scenes. We don't have to talk too much about it. On the bike, the yellow jacket kind of confirms your thing. That's literally what we're going for.
Seeing her in the yellow jacket was like, all right, okay. There's no doubt in my mind at that point. Like that she's not in that outfit by accident.
Yeah, it might rain later, but apparently, also apparently that jacket is actually the physical same jacket that Jonas had in season 1.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It looks good on both of them.
Yeah, it looks good.
Similar physiques.
Yeah, although I might have just read that from somewhere and then believed it to be true, but I'm pretty sure it's true.
I'll buy it.
Okay, Jonas exits the cave.
Yep.
I've got a few things to say about this, but I'm going to see if you say them first.
What's in him exiting the cave?
Yeah.
I don't have too much to say about him actually leaving the cave, I don't think.
Okay.
I've got stuff about him arriving at the Nielsen's. Obviously, like, the cave... I don't actually... Do we see the front-on shot of the cave where everything's reversed and the drug chair is...
Doubled? Yeah, we do.
Yeah, that's the only thing I really noticed from it, though.
Okay, so what my analysis of this would be in this world. So you imagine if it's mirroring the first season. In this world, Jonas is occupying the space that he will one day as the stranger.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
He is the stranger of this world in this timeline. So he's coming out. He's it's hilarious to me because he actually is the stranger as well. Like, he's mirroring himself. Like, it's sort of, this is his practice run. You know what I mean? He's in this alternate world. He's not his own world. He can screw it up if he wants. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to be the stranger here. So even the way they shot him coming out of the cave, what he's wearing as well, very trending towards the stranger. That's just, for me, that's how I felt about it. I thought Jonas's role in this episode very much... Obviously, he was much more gung-ho than the stranger was. The stranger didn't start jumping into people's lives, but that was definitely the idea I thought it was going for.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely some credibility to that. I didn't honestly think in those terms too much, but now that you mentioned it, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we get revealed that... Well, first of all, Bartos's hair.
Oh my god. So this is what I was talking about with this kind of blending of styles. So you've got like really grungy, hair metal-y Magnus, and then Bartos showing up looking like fucking Patrick Bateman out of American Psycho.
Yeah.
Just like, with his hair. Like, as someone who has got his lockdown hair on at the moment, I can really empathize with Bartos's efforts, but my word. And his kind of plaid waistcoat or whatever he's wearing underneath his jacket. Good lord! Like, it's a great look.
You like Huey Lewis and the News, Magnus?
He has definitely killed someone with an axe in his apartment. Is all I'm saying about Bartos.
According to your theory, was he killed by a pickaxe?
Yeah. Oh, the irony.
Yeah. Oh, the irony. Yeah. That's the mirroring. You see.
But yeah, do we? So maybe you can answer a question about this. I don't think we've actually heard his name yet. But is Killian? Is that his?
Killian is his name. Yeah.
Was he mentioned at all in the regular world and I've just forgotten?
Wasn't mentioned, but he was in the play.
Oh, so he was the guy who plays the same role in that. Okay. Because
that actor must have loved the phone call for season 3.
Oh yeah, like, you're coming back in a big way.
Yeah.
Like, I remember Dark. It was that show I was in one episode of.
Yeah.
But he's supposed to be Eric Obendorf's brother, isn't he?
Yeah, so you would assume that he is his brother in the other one too.
I feel like Eric has mentioned having a brother, or it was mentioned that Eric has a brother, but I think he was like away or had run off or something like that.
Yeah, which actually really, to be honest with you, it really puts the play from the first season in a even more tragic light, because both of the characters, like the characters of the play, Killian and Marta, had both lost a brother in the last week or so, and they both still went forward with the play.
They just, like, the show must go on, I guess.
So it's sort of alluding that they were kind of kindred spirits in the other world, kind of like, obviously.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah,
like bonded by grief.
Yeah.
I think the thing that really struck me in the school scene, and also the scenes leading up to it, is that the first episode of Dark is very referential to like 80s horror. Like, there's a lot of night shooting, which we don't get a lot of in the rest of the series. Quite synthy score. The score stays synthy throughout, but it feels like it's pulling from that kind of from that kind of genre. And this, I feel like they're kind of like doubling down on that and mirroring this. You've got like the mist shrouded surrounds of Vinden that are like really, really and the synthy score as well, really pulling from John Carpenter, particularly, movies like The Fog. But then when Marta and Magnus arrive at school, we see another horror trope, which is that everyone appears to be dressed up for Halloween despite it being the 4th of November, which I don't know, maybe that's a thing in Germany where like Halloween is kind of celebrated after October the 31st, or maybe it's an alternate reality thing where Halloween is just a different date.
Well, they might just have the school dress up day that day.
Maybe, yeah, but I love it anyway. It's a real like kind of trope of horror movies to have the Halloween party's going on, and that's when spooky stuff happens, and you've got the Shining twins in the background, a bunch of guys dressed like Grim Reapers walking the halls. But I loved that this episode. One of my favorite things about this episode was how like willingly it returned to pulling from those kind of 80s horror references that we saw in the first episode and haven't really seen since. And this was a welcome return of that.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say, there are a few constants in the world, but one guarantee is that if Bartos wants to get with Marta, there will be a blonde fella to stop him.
yeah. There's always someone in Bartos' way to Marta.
Yeah, even in the alternate reality, still struck out. Right. Okay. So then we get Helga, old Helga. With and Peter and Charlotte there. Charlotte comes in, says I was at an appointment, so we all know what she was doing. Not at this point, you didn't, but we do now. I was starting to think, well, it's not. I don't think it's going to be Katerina. So who's it going to be? And then what is her name? Is it Caroline von Vol?
The person playing Charlotte. I'm trying to remember the actor's name.
Caroline.
Actor's name. But when she came in with the long hair, I was like, oh, talk about a glow up for Charlotte. So I was like, maybe she's the one who's seducing Ulrich away from Hannah.
Yeah, well, that's definitely happened. What do you think about old Helga?
Just the one eye, just got beaten in a slightly different way this time round.
Does that want to have you make a theory that will hopefully sort of definitely come true based on his eye?
Oh, what, that like Voller is going to swap around at some point to be him? Is that what you're implying?
No, I'm just saying that if he has one ruined eye, it would insinuate that something similar happened to him that happened in the real world, or not real world, but you know what I mean, that happened to him here. So it's actually a home run theory if you want to make it.
Oh, what, that he's got one eye because someone went back in time? I guess it would be. I'm trying to think who it would be. Because no one's actually lost anyone in this, so I don't know who would go back in time to beat him.
So there's a theory there.
Well, I'll have a think about it. I thought you were implying that somehow Voller from the real world comes to this reality and grows up to be that Helga or something. I was like, what are you talking about? It's a ridiculous theory that you're proposing.
No.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of always assumed that, that he's got that wound for the exact same reason. I didn't put a theory in the Matrix, to be honest, for it, because I was like, that feels like a gimme. But I actually thinking about it, I don't know who it would be.
Well, you could keep it vague. I would give you a point if you just said someone will go back in time and beat him with something. I
beat him in the eye with a rock.
Yeah, I would give you a point for that if that came true. Like that's a theory, you know.
All right, fair enough. I'll put it in there. I've moved beyond that now. Like I'm drunk on the taste of glory, and I'm only seeking out the sort of bigger whales to hunt. So to speak.
That's true, actually. And we didn't mention Konrad noticed that he made a mistake in the theory matrix. Yeah. So his season 2 wasn't +5; it was actually +6. What was the theory that you?
It was, to be honest, it's a bit of a.
Oh, we're gonna have an argument here, are we?
No, we're not gonna have an argument. Like, you agreed with this, but it's kind of like it was an orange one that I'd accidentally left as a -1 instead of turning to a 0.
Oh,
so okay. it was my like War and Peace essay about what the cycles actually are. That was like 7 or 8 lines long, to do with people doing like shifts from the Sigmundus crew to like maintain the cycles and stuff like that. And you got to the end of it, it was just like, I can't mark that wrong because there's just too much in it. So we're just going to call it a 0. But I forgot to change the score. So 6, I'm at +1
Yep, and
Positive.
as a tradition on the After Dark podcast, I'm not going and changing the pictures of the theory matrix. That will be reflected in the last season's ones. Okay, so that's interesting. So you're actually in the positive now. That's impressive.
For the time being.
That is impressive. Okay, so Jonas goes round to his house, or hang on a minute, not his house at all. He goes in and he goes into his bedroom. I don't have much to say about this, except for the fact that we can all understand how he's feeling.
I think the thing that really stood out to me with him arriving at the I guess the Nielsen, I'm assuming they're still Nielsen's, or formerly Karnvold house, mirrors his arrival at that property in episode 6 of the previous season. It's literally the exact same shot. It might have been done more than once actually, but that's the episode that stands out to me, and that was kind of treated as kind of him heralding the arrival of a gathering storm behind him. And I wonder if the implication there is that he might actually represent the same thing to this reality. Interesting.
Yeah, can't wait to get through this season. I can't wait till you've seen this all.
That's where you're supposed to say awesome and just move on.
Awesome. Yep. Sorry, I forgot myself. Awesome. Right. Next scene. We get. I don't know. We've already talked a little bit about this, but Hannah finds the hair, and then she eventually goes to the school to talk to Katarina. Rookie mistake. Katarina was loving this.
Oh yeah, like she was like the cat who got the cream in this one. She was like, oh. Such a shame that the husband you stole away from me is now cheating on you as well. Who could have possibly seen that coming?
Yeah, not Hannah, that's for sure.
No,
but yeah, I thought that was great. Yeah, exactly. I was glad to see that because there's a few characters in this episode that had different jobs. For example, Ulrich is no longer. Ulrich is now the head of the chief of police.
He's the chief of police, yeah,
rather than Charlotte. Which puts an interesting idea of the power dynamic there. Anyway,
yeah, it does, and makes it. I mean, he's always like that though, Ulrich, and it's an interesting way of like kind of contorting that character. He kind of seems to charm, I guess, women who are weaker than him in some way. Like Hannah is kind of presented as quite desperate in season 1. Her husband has died, although he wasn't dead at the time that she was that the affair started. But she's certainly kind of desperate for any kind of affection by the time the affair ends. And here, like you say, Ulrich is kind of abusing his position a little bit here, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that you shouldn't be doing that in the evidence room. Come on.
No.
But yeah, so then we get, again, a bit of a mirror to the scene where Magnus comes into the classroom in season 1 and the teacher doesn't care. Jonas comes in. This time Bartosz is giving the speech, not Franziska. And it makes me think... God. I wonder what Bartosz would think if someone made a comment about his black hole while he's
this is it shows that Jonas is the one that was holding Bartosz back all this time. I think like he was, here he is giving a very competent presentation on the formation of black holes and not making inappropriate comments at the back of the class.
Yeah,
all he needed was to not have the bad influence of Jonas next to him.
I mean, technically, in both he was making comments about black holes, but
that is true. Yeah, I mean, maybe he was making a legitimate comment the first time round, and he just misunderstood how black holes form. I don't know.
Or maybe this time he's doing a very elaborate description of Franziska.
Oh God! But I think someone should start a count of the number of times Jonas has stood dumbfounded, failing to respond to basic questions after traveling through time in this series. Because I reckon we're in double digits now.
And then asking what year it is every time.
The number is high. I mean, to be fair, in this time. His physics teacher does appear to be Robert Downey Jr., so maybe he was just a bit starstruck.
Yeah, I think it's the same teacher. Actually,
is it the same teacher?
Yeah, that's one thing that's cool is that they bring the same character, like same actors back, no matter how small the role is in this show.
Yeah,
that's what I love about.
I don't remember actually seeing that teacher's face, to be honest, but the classroom's definitely shot from the other angle as well, so maybe we just saw the back of his head or something in the last one.
Well, I remember him reading from a book in the first season, but yeah, like pretty much. So.
I like the implication here that physics is the opposite of literature, because like they were studying Ariadne in the other one. So what's the opposite of that? Physics, I guess. One of these will get you a job, and the other one will not.
Yeah, exactly. But basically, how would you feel if you were in Marta's shoes here, sitting in the room? Some weirdo you've never met comes
Just
in,
staring at you,
just stares at you.
blood all over his hands and a scar on his neck.
Scar on his
She's
neck.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, she's like, Jonas, chill out, man. Like, you've travelled through time plenty of times now. You know how this works. Like, just relax. Yeah, he doesn't want to come across as threatening, but he obviously does to Marta.
It's so strange. Right then, I really liked. Now I don't know how you feel about this, but I really liked the Alexander Tiedemann scenes in this episode. Because it kind of felt like, do you remember when we watched Edge of Tomorrow, right? And as they were going through the different cycles or the day multiple times, sometimes it would skip an hour forward, but then in a future loop, they would show us what happened in between times. Yeah. I think that in this alternate world, they're kind of showing us the storyline from the first season with Jurgen and Alexander.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I think actually one of the things that can be really fun about a Mirror Worlds conceit, and I appreciate I'm saying this having kind of said in the was either the season wrap up or the Theory Matrix video, that I don't always love them because they can feel a bit low stakes.
Yeah.
But it's that they allow us to explore how characters we know would respond to events had they occurred differently, or show us events that we haven't seen transpire in slightly different circumstances. So seeing Alexander following the death of Regina really opens up something else about his character that we haven't really seen, like how he would respond to grief. We also see it obviously in the Ulrich and Hannah relationship and the Doppler relationship, with Charlotte being the one who is what's the word I'm looking for?
Promiscuous.
Promiscuous, yeah. And yeah, like we see the other side of the Alexander Jurgen dynamic. Obviously in the first season it's presented as that with them as having something to hide, and we're kind of looking at it from Ulrich's point of view, and here we know what they're hiding, so there's no sense in it being presented that way again, so instead we see their side of it.
Yeah, it's really clever in my opinion. It makes it's a way to add depth to a story which in our world, I'm going to call it our world because we spent so much time there, those characters are dead now because of the apocalypse. Well, we don't know about Jurgen. Who knows where he'll show
yeah,
up.
Jurgen could have been anywhere. It could have been in his wet pit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but I like the idea of like going back and filling in gaps. It's just so cool, and you'll see throughout the season. There's certain things with Alexander. Like I'm not going to go into any of the big theory stuff with Alexander, like from my theories. I'm not going to go into that, but there are certain things that really patch little moments together for us. Yeah. In terms of his actual just human story, which I'm looking forward to you seeing as well. But it's weird. It's cool because they do it like in the alternate world, which is a really cool method.
And I think it's a really smart way of doing it. A lot of Mirror World stuff doesn't really do that. It's just deals with the big picture stuff of like, what would happen if Bruce Wayne had died and Batman's dad was the one who survived the attack or something, and deals with that kind of stuff. And it's, I'm talking in comic book terms, which are obviously going to be less involved than Dark, but that's normally where you see this kind of thing done. Yeah, and here it's much more interesting. Also, Alexander looks great with a beard. He should have grown a beard in the real world. Yeah,
he's grown a beard. I don't know if the beard makes him look like he's maybe lost 10 pounds, but either way, maybe they were just shooting him with less cameras,
Yeah, get strip some of that weight off by having less cameras on him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I used to shoot with 3, but now I only shoot with 1. It's doing well. His mum, well, the genetic identical to his mum.
Yeah.
Mama. The delivery of that line was like really good.
It was kind of hard to watch this. Like,
yeah,
it was like, oh, Jonas, like you're just once again just desperate for someone to show you what you need to do. He is just lost, which is interesting actually, because we think of the sort of Theseus and Ariadne parallels between him and Marta, and obviously Theseus is a Greek hero who you consider to be capable, I guess, of looking after himself, but the reality is that he did need someone to guide him through and out of the labyrinth. And I think Jonas, for his part in that story, is very much in the labyrinth and doesn't know where he's going at the moment. Like he has lost his thread and he needs some help in finding it. And this scene really kind of encapsulated that for me. Just this sort of I want my mum attitude that he showed as Hannah walked past him.
Yeah, exactly. A little glimpse of his home, and unfortunately, no. I will just say, there's certain words in German that, as far as I'm concerned, have about 20 different meanings. Like, the amount of times they say bitter. I know bitter, bitter means sorry, right?
That means please.
Oh, please, sorry, yeah. So
sorry is like, es tut mir leid.
So I thought it meant sorry because Hannah turns around and says bitter?
It's one of those words like, it's one of our German listeners.
Like they say good for everything.
Like it means please, but you can but you also say you can also say it as like thank you, or you can also say it as like goots. It works as well. It's kind of interesting sort of colloquialisms of German in the same way that we might. I'm trying to think what we might say.
Well, there's obviously in English there's a load of words like that too, but it's just funny like when we're watching a subtitled show and I just hear the same word over and over and over again, and it's always got a different meaning.
The subtitles do quite a lot of heavy lifting in the show to sort of change it from a literal translation to something that sounds a bit more sort of like naturalized English. But you do definitely catch it sometimes when they say a word and you're like, that's not what they said.
My favorite German word based off this show is the word for impossible. I don't remember what that is. I'm going to give it a go, but I'm not going to get it right because I've never actually seen it spelt. It's like unmöglich or something like that. Tell me in the comments how to spell it because I want to remember, but it just sounds so cool, that word, whenever they say it. This is unmöglich or whatever they say. It's just it just sounds great.
I think möglich is... I think möglich might be good as well. But on its own.
Impossible means this is not good.
I might be wrong about that though. Like it's been a while since I've used the word möglich, to be honest. But if that's what it is,
I'm going to miss these chats when we go on to our next show because our next show isn't going to be a German one.
Well, we'll just listen to it in German.
We have to. Yeah, we'll just do the German anyway. Yeah. What, the dub? Right. All right, so we've already talked about a little bit about Ulrich and Charlotte in the evidence room. We can talk a little bit more about that if you want, but I also wanted to stop on this scene just to get your thoughts on Torben's situation.
Oh my god, as is always the case with Dark, just when you think that they're not going to get any comedy, we get something like the pull back and reveal on Torben's arm where it's like, oh, he's got two eyes in this world. Camera pulls back, one arm. It's just it's great. I laughed out loud when they did that.
Yeah.
Poor Torben, he just can't catch a break.
Do you now, don't make this a theory, but do you expect at some point this season we're going to get that Torben starting to tell someone how he lost an arm?
I hope so. I desperately hope so. I want him to like really forcefully try and tell someone like, listen, I need to tell someone how this happened. And then like Ulrich just walks in and is like, Torben, go and get me some more information on 20,000 sets of tire prints or something.
I like to think he just like dipped it in one of the barrels.
yeah, he didn't know what he was doing, and his arm just travelled.
Yeah, his arms are
2088.
Sitting in some other time.
I love Torben. He's useless.
Yeah. My mom said the other day on the Dark Discussions episode, I mentioned Torben, and she goes, "Oh yeah, I never knew what he was about." You know.
Yeah, I mean, not much. Yeah. I think is the answer.
Not much. Yeah. All right. So the play now. So this world, they're doing Ariadne. To be honest with you, they're doing Ariadne in a much more dark way. No pun intended. But also, the stage is actually like designed almost to look like a cave as well.
Yeah, it is. And this, I know we haven't had this exact dialogue from the Ariadne play before, but every time it comes back, I find it really hard to escape the idea that this dialogue is being. I presume it's a real play. I haven't actually checked.
I'm not sure. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if it is, it feels like this is being used as inspiration for much of what we've already seen. So we got her talking about, what flew plummets to Earth, and people being punished for their sins because their eyes and hearts were blind. And I find it really interesting. I don't know whether you ever did any theories on this or how you feel about this, but I feel like at the center of this show is this sort of recurring idea of like morality and people being punished for sins in a story which seems sort of so far beyond the scope of morals as to seem ludicrous. Like what we're dealing with here is so outlandish that morals you could easily be cast by the wayside. It could be like, well, what are the rules about, you know, incest and murdering if there is an infinite number of people? Like, do the ethics of that still apply? And I think there's this push and pull at the heart of Dark that we see this like continued efforts by a sort of handful of people, so like Marta and Jonas and Claudia as well, who are determined to do the right thing regardless of how irrelevant it might seem in light of the kind of enormity of the events that they're facing, which I find really interesting. And it kind of really struck me here because I think when you contrast these kind of characters to someone like Adam, who wants to take the easy option, he wants to just end it all because that's simpler than trying to unpick this knot back to the or unpick this, I guess, like the flap of the butterfly's wings, like find that thing that caused this is too hard. And I think I've pointed out that Dark is a show that's been quite pessimistic at times, particularly in how it's presented. I don't know, like a character like Egon, you know, and said this is a fundamentally good person and look where it got him. But I think in moments like this and with characters like this, the show is saying there are still good people here trying to do the right thing, who are fundamentally guided by a good moral compass. And yeah, it just really stood out to me. There's kind of a bit of a monologue, but it really struck me for some reason in this episode.
Yeah, well, if you're gonna do a monologue about a scene, doing a monologue about a monologue is
Yeah.
the best one to do.
Yeah, hold that thought, Martha. I've got one right back for you.
I think I know exactly what you mean. Like the idea, yeah, where it's such a far removed world from our own, how crazy it is, and the idea that everything happens infinite times or there's infinite possibilities. Is there any real need to care about what's morally right? I completely understand what you mean. At the same time, definitely the way the morals are being brought up, it's always brought up through these thematic stories like the Ariadne story, or like, you know, the references to Adam, you know what I mean? And now we've possibly got an Eve, you know. So there's all these mentions of morality, and even in the past, and the mentions of free will as well, like talking about like Claudia mentioning, you know, when she was about to kill Noah, saying like, do you have a choice? You know, would you choose to do something different? I think that come the end of it, I think you might have different thoughts on it than you do now, but at the same time, it's just adding to the story as we go as well. So,
well, yeah, I just think it's really important to like. I'm really glad that it does anchor the show. The show is anchored. It's still in these ideas of morality, even though it would be very easy to dismiss them because we've kind of moved past a presentation of a story where morality is easy to apply. I think it kind of brings us back down to kind of the root of the people in Vinden, basically, which is really important. So I think they never lose sight of that. So I hope it carries on. Yeah,
so do I. I do know if it does or not, but I'm not going to tell you. So, as with all things, you know, it's funny, like, because we're going to go from this show where I can't say anything. We're going to have one episode or two of me being like, yeah, wasn't Dark great? And you'll be like, yeah, it was great. And then we're just going to go into a new show. And then again, I'm just going to be like, awesome, let's go on. All right, okay, so reveal time. Francisca is deaf and mute.
Yep.
And Ellie can talk. Now, I said to you, now you are a fool, Konrad. You are a fool. I said to you, when you said that you assume the actress can speak, I said, is that a theory? And you laughed at me. I was trying to give you a point.
I wouldn't have felt good taking a point for that, though. Like, it was.
I honestly didn't think the actress. I thought the actress was deaf mute. Honestly.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, I mean, there must be, there must be positions available for deaf mute actresses, but I just assume it's far harder to get those or to get to make a career with that kind of impairment. But yeah, I think it's really interesting.
Girl in the Quiet Place is a good example.
Is she actually deaf mute?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, well, that's good. That they went out of their way to hire someone who fits the role. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the bunker scene is interesting. I didn't really see that coming. Them trading the impairment, so to speak. It also seems like a profoundly uncomfortable place to have sex, to be honest. And these two get a lot of time this episode, and they seem to spend most of it having sex, which is...
Well, you got to give a bit of that. At the
Get
start.
a little bit in there.
Give a bit of that at the start of the season. You know, Francisca's just so sort of inner element in this. Like, compare her in this one to in the real world in the what should we call it? Called Adam's world. In Adam's world, we have Francisca very uptight at the start of the season, going to get the drugs. She's like, whereas this one, she's wearing a dress. Like you know, she's
actually absorbed quite a lot of. I think she's absorbed quite a lot of Ellie's fashion sense, because she's a lot preppier in this. She's got like a sort of tartan dress and long socks on. Yeah,
she just seems like she doesn't like. She's in this relationship with Magnus from the get go. So obviously they got together earlier than they did in the other world, and it just seems like, you know, they're just having a lovely life together at this stage.
Yeah, they're having a good time. Whereas Ellie's at home getting grabbed by Helge. Yeah.
And if we know anything about Dark, you know, Magnus and Francisca having such a lovely time together. We'll see how long it lasts. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't have high hopes for that relationship, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. And then we get the Peter Doppler is a priest scene where Jonas goes and looks for his dad's gravestone. Isn't there. Peter's a priest. What do you think?
Well, so, I mean, this just goes back to those horror references. Again, this shot of the mist-shrouded cemetery, even in daylight as we see it here, it's still really dark, is classic horror imagery, and then the priest sort of emerging out of it put me in mind of, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but Richard Donner's The Omen from the 70s is a very good horror movie, if anyone hasn't seen that. But going back to what we said about how much...
should we call him a priest? Because he's married to Charlotte. Vicar? I don't know what you would say.
Yeah, I guess he'd be a vicar. No, I think you can still be a priest.
Let's say pastor.
Pastor, sure.
Mm.
Yeah, like it reminded me again of what we said earlier, where I don't really know how much to read into the parallel here, because the way his character is portrayed, he doesn't seem to be the knower. He doesn't seem menacing in any way. He just seems like he works in a church. But it's a good scene, and I think it's just establishing that Michael Kahnwald really doesn't exist in this world. That seemed like the purpose of this scene to me.
Yeah, and just a little bit of shock value that he's a priest as well. You know, you can always need a bit of shock value. Okay, so then we do get where we go back into Adam's world, and we have 21st of September 1987. So this would be, now you notice they're sort of splitting the timelines here. So we're in our world we're in September, whereas in the alternate world we're in November back in 2019 in the original timeline from the first season. So they are starting to break away from that everything's happening on the same day model. So what did you think of the scene of the fellas going in to old burnt Doppler?
I mean, this is just another great scene with these guys. They're so intimidating. You've got that dunk dunk theme as they're like walking in formation towards the house. The light is fading. There's like orange lights on. There's a lot of really good use of like orange and blues against each other in this episode. Yeah, I mean, the fact they're in the 21st of September now makes me think that these three have access to a time machine that lets them go to whatever day they wish. So similar
that
to
is you assuming that the first scene we saw them in wasn't that same day?
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I mean, I guess if they're traveling in 33-year jumps, what would this put us at? So we were in 1980.
We've had no proof that they've travelled at all. We've seen them burning a room and then seeing them walking in here.
That is true. And I suppose that room did look old at that point. Like it looked like no one had been in there for a while. I don't know if it looked 60 years untouched old. It looked to me...
Well, we don't know. We don't know when Sigmund has left it.
That's true. That is true. But yeah, well, I mean, so my first thought was, these guys maybe have access to a time machine as well. But we'll see what comes of that.
Well, I mean, that's a fair assumption.
Yeah. Everyone's at it. Yeah. Everyone's got one these days. Yeah. Also, actually, just to briefly mention something I didn't mention in the opening, and we won't see it again. there's quite a notable difference in the effects used for time machines between the two worlds. So you've got most of the time machines we've seen have been like kind of cesium-137 portals that are kind of these black orbs that swallow you and suck you into it, and then you appear somewhere else. Yeah. Whereas the one Marta has, you kind of like puff out of existence and puff back somewhere else, which is just struck me as interesting.
Yeah, it looks cool too. Because I like how like just before they puff out, like sort of parts of their body are starting to like sort of fray into the ether. Yeah. But yeah, it is interesting that it's interesting that they made that decision. So do you think that those orbs are powered by cesium-137 as well, or cesium-731?
Yeah, maybe it's a higher number of cesium. I
did the mirror thing, you know.
Yeah. Nice. You're looking very proud of yourself. Got it. I don't know. I feel like every other time machine has, so the smart money would be on this one is as well. Mm-hmm. But there does seem to be a very obvious distinction in the graphical representation or the visual representation of what they actually do that makes me think maybe there's a different element in this world that does the same thing slightly differently.
Yeah, so it can actually it can travel between worlds too. So it's already a much more sophisticated thing. So it's doing something. It's doing something.
So just to go back to cleanup crew coming in and doing some damage. I'm guessing the reason they're here is because Burnt knows a bit about the God Particle, knows what happened in the power plant, and they just want to shut him up. But they let themselves in, which seems to imply they have a key, or he just leaves his door open, I guess. And the youngest one, his kind of like unblinking face is amazing acting. Like, he's legitimately terrifying. And then we see one of the most brutal killings so far in the show, really.
What's the cheese wire or whatever that is?
Like he gets like just garroted an old man in his wheelchair. Like, it's just remorseless. And it sounds like the power plant is next, which makes me it put me back in mind actually of in season 1. I can't remember if it was Burnt or if it was someone else. They said that there was an accident at the power plant in the 80s. And my assumption for a long time has been that whatever the Stranger did at the end of season 1 caused an accident in the 80s. But it hasn't actually been mentioned that there's been an accident in the 80s. We just saw a bunch of barrels of cesium-137 turn up at some point. So I wonder if these guys are actually going to go and cause the accident in the 80s.
Well, that's a theory.
Yeah, it's in there. It is in there. But I love that these guys are such good bad guys. I love them. They're just... There's this inexorable march of bastards just coming to kill everything and burn everything down.
Yeah. Tying up loose ends. It's great.
Yeah.
Hey, we haven't seen Burnt in a while. Let's go kill him.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to see Benny get it next, and then Yana and Tronta.
Yeah, just like going around everywhere. Yeah, Tronta in the middle of trimming a hedge. Just like, not today.
Just mopping up all the side characters.
Yeah, not today, Grandpa. All right, okay, so next up, we get the Jurgen Alexander scene. I think we've talked enough about that. Sorry, the Yasin scene.
Yeah, Yasin.
Now, we haven't actually had any mention of Yasin in this timeline, so maybe he stayed in his original time and grew up to be... grew up
to be Alexander, rather than being taken as a baby and given to that woman who wasn't his mother.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And he was secretly able to hear and speak.
Yeah, but we can see it here, because he's grown up where that hasn't happened to him, and he just grows up speaking the whole time. He doesn't need to pretend to be deaf for the sake of his mother.
That's canon. Alright, okay, so then we get Jonas sort of going and speaking to Marta. Well, first of all, he speaks to Marta before the rest of the crew come down. And what did you think about this scene with Marta? It reflected the first episode again, where him and Marta had a bit of a moment talking about deja vu, glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah, I mean, she has told him to fuck off already at this point in the episode. So I do feel a bit like she is kind of rejecting this out of hand. But at the same time, I think the fact that she doesn't immediately just say fuck off again when he tells her they've met before on the train tracks makes me think that she can feel some kind of deep intrinsic link between them at this point. Like, deep down, she knows there is something to what he is saying here. And it's also worth noting that she doesn't respond to the Matrix line, which suggests to me that the Matrix doesn't exist in this alternate world, which is a tragedy in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, she feels something deep down. There's some sort of pull to her. She feels the need to give him a 20 quid Amazon voucher and a card for his birthday. Some sort of auntie instinct, you know?
Yeah, and buy him one of the Matrix sequels on DVD.
Yeah,
but she gets in Matrix Revolutions, unfortunately.
Yeah, Deus Ex Machina. Right, next. So they go to the cave. I like it. This one, I don't believe. Now I might be wrong, but I do not believe that they were going for the drugs this time. I think they were just going for a spoopy time.
Well, they do mention like maybe the cops didn't find anything, so I think they were still going for the drugs.
Okay, maybe they just didn't they didn't fully lay that out for us because we were meant to assume that they were.
Yeah, but I think the thing that I really took from this is Magnus has a lot more about Ulrich in him in this presentation of his character. Like he's very sort of imposing and a bit of a bully. Like he has some of the nastier elements of his parents. And there's a really interesting little moment between him and Francisca where when Bartos starts talking about Nostradamus and Magnus is immediately like, shut up, Bartos. and then he says, oh, the world's going to end. And Magnus says, oh, it's a good thing I got a girlfriend before that all happened. And I think Francisca kind of tells him off because he's not including her in the conversation because obviously she can't hear the conversation.
Yeah.
And he kind of plays it off in that sort of roguish, charming way that's actually quite unfair to her that like Ulrich does with some women. And it's a really interesting little hint of where his character might go, that he has, you know, yes, he's charming and yes, he's charismatic, but that's actually quite a nasty thing to do to someone who's deaf mute. It's just be like, oh, don't worry about it. You wouldn't have enjoyed that conversation anyway.
Exactly.
And like make that decision for them. His character is played with a lot of subtlety in this, which is really cool, I think.
Yeah, and what do you think about the decision to have so much focus on these teenagers in this 2019 again, even though it's not world, because the characters that we have in the original world, Adam's world, they are now traveled to God knows where. Well, you know, we kind of know by the end of this.
I know where.
Yeah, so they travel somewhere else. So in that original world, we are no longer going to get that 2019 sort of modern day teen aspect of the show, but we still get it because of this.
No, I love it. I think I really liked the first episode of Dark for a lot of the kind of tones and reference points it was striking, and we get it again here. You know, there's teens going off into the woods and getting spooked by loud noises. It's giving us the same thing we've seen before that's very entertaining, but with a slightly different spin on it, and it made it really, really compelling to watch, I think. Yeah,
I would agree with you. All right, montage time.
Yeah.
You know what, with this show, I'm done pointing out everything in a montage. You want to tell me? There's just so many montages. They're all so good. Do you want to, like, obviously, the only thing I'll say is Jonas watching Mikkel sleep. That's one.
Yeah, to be honest with this one, I didn't take too many notes about what was actually happening in this because it's all just I think with some montages in Dark, in fact, I think with quite a lot of montages in Dark, you're just kind of supposed to luxuriate in it, and it's they're kind of like a moment. We've talked about this, I think, back in season 1, but sometimes they feel like it's a moment to kind of reflect on what's happened, breathe, and get ready for the final 10 or 15 minutes of the episode. And I think this was one of those. So, you know, we see Ulrich and Charlotte canoodling in a car, and then birds start falling on the car. I wonder if Charlotte was a weird ornithologist in this world, actually.
She jumps out of the car and goes, hang on a minute, Ulrich.
Yeah, I've got to collect them. Put them in a fridge. Katerina, like, on her own in the school. I'm pretty sure there was some Helge in there as well, doing something weird. But it was playing Ludo with Ellie. Do they have Ludo in Germany? I don't know.
Something like that. Snakes and ladders.
Snakes and ladders. Monopoly. No, she's too old.
Snakes and ladders.
That's definitely right. That's definitely the right German.
Yeah. 1/3 correct.
It was like, it felt like it was setting the stage for the end of the episode for some of the big stuff that we're about to see. One of the scenes coming after it was amazing, I have to say. So I can't wait to get to that.
And the scene where they're all in the bunker, that's the first one that comes after it. and all the teenagers run, and it makes sense that they establish. There's the point of the scene, Conrad. They establish that Franziska and Magnus use this as a hideout, and it makes sense as well.
Yeah.
Like, it is in Franziska's family, you know what I mean? So they all run, go into the bunker, and then, wouldn't you know, old Madsy Nielsen falls through the portal.
There he is. So, I mean, actually, one thing I did miss, which is before this, is that when Marta sees what appears to be herself as the cesium-covered ghost,
yes,
as she's running away, wearing the white dress she wore, not white anymore, but wearing the white dress she wore the night that she and Jonas slept together, to me, that is a confirmation of the idea that there is something that can reach across times somehow, like whether it's, you know, some kind of... It's why I think the conversations about morality and spirituality are interesting, because I feel like this show, it's not saying anything explicitly, but I do think by the end of this there is still going to be this unanswered question of being like, there is something that is allowing these times to talk to each other, like some link between these people, these characters, that can't be explained by the science and the time travel stuff, and maybe this is one of them, where there's something that is confronting Marta with some ghost of an alternate reality. But it was really cool to see, and there's a really good bait and switch in it as well, where she turns and you think it's going to be, like, I don't know, Jonas to take her off through the caves or something, and it was actually just her dumb boyfriend to drag her off to the caves. Killian, yeah,
and I will just say, all the things you're talking about there at the end, like there might be something that's unanswered that links the worlds, that sort of negates the science a little bit. You've consistently said throughout that your hope for the show is that everything is broken and there is like an emotional end that is like it's fulfilling in the character and the story, rather than not necessarily just making it like a physics book.
Yeah, I would like there to be something approaching a happy ending. I'm realistic about it. This show has been very Shades of Grey up until this point, so I think it's very unlikely.
33 Shades of Grey.
33 Shades of Grey, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very unlikely that there's going to have, to quote Black Books, and they all drink lemonade. The end, like at the end of this, but I don't think that the spirituality and that kind of stuff is going to be addressed more explicitly than it is being. Mm-hmm. I think it's just kind of hovering there in the background, asking interesting questions about something else. Like it's provoking ideas of something beyond what we're seeing here. And I think the ending will be a bit more grounded in the science that we've seen in the show. But I do hope it does resolve relatively happily as well, just because I like these characters now. I'd like to see them happy.
Yeah, okay, I completely get that. Right, any comments on little Madsy Nielsen before we... I'm purposely making an It reference by calling him Madsy Nielsen. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. Hey, Madsy. Just that I wonder if he existed in this time. That was my first thought.
Oh, you think maybe he's like a copy of the other one?
Well, I don't know. I just, like, they've explicitly not said anything about or shown any pictures of Ulrich having a missing brother or anything in this world. So, I mean, maybe they're just not showing it because we already know that and we don't need all the establishing for it.
I'm not saying anything about this particular thing, but that's something I would approach. I approached the season like this, and I think after seeing it all, it sort of makes sense. If there's something we don't see in the Origin world, we assume it's the same as the other one. That's what I do. Anyway.
I think that's fair enough. Like I was kind of on the fence with this. It was just in the back of my head. I was like, oh, they haven't shown us anything. I wonder if this is going to turn out to be different.
Well, no, I could, but I mean, overall, that's what I'm.
Yeah. No, I think that's a reasonably safe approach. But I mean, it's interesting that it's these guys rather than Peter Doppler and Tronter.
And Claudia didn't come in this time.
Yeah, that's it. That's true. So. I wonder what's going to happen.
So it doesn't matter where he's found, possibly?
Yes. Or if he's even going to be found in the right place, because no one's there directing them. I have no idea what's happening with this, but I can't wait to see more of these guys.
Yeah, cool. Well, we get the reveal. Old Marta.
Yep.
Do you think first of all, do you think the casting's good?
I'm not sure. I think the eyes are right. But she felt a bit more like Morticia Adams to me than Marta does. I think like the long black dress kind of distracted me a bit. it's not bad. I think it's one of those ones like Ulrich where when I see her again, I'll probably come round on it a bit more.
Well, this is not one that the fans said was a perfect match. By Hollywood standards, good. By dark standards, it's all right.
I'll put it this way. As soon as I saw her, I was like, oh, that's old Marta. And obviously, like, I'm preloaded with the knowledge that, like, yeah, exactly. No, only one person has a fringe in the entirety of Germany, and it's Marta. Obviously, I'm, like, preloaded with the knowledge that she is the Jonas, and Jonas turns into the stranger who turns into Adam, so I'm expecting an old version of Marta to show up. But even with that, I still clocked it straight away, which means the casting was at least decent.
Yeah.
I don't trust her either. She has the same thing as Adam, where she's talking a good game. Everything she's saying seems like she's saying the right stuff. But knowing what we know about Adam, I'm a bit like, I don't know if I trust you. I'm wearing all black again.
Yeah, well, Adam was all grey, as I told you before, but
but just put some colour in there, a little dash of colour. Like get some fun, coloured socks from Marks and Spencers or something.
She should have been wearing full camo. Like she's trying to hide in the bushes. Like,
can you imagine that? She's like really, really into like military surplus, and she's just wearing like army jacket with a BB gun.
Yeah, that was the dream. So that was one of my theories didn't come true. That's what I thought was going to happen, but
it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to happen by the end of the season?
I mean, maybe. We're all going to the post-apocalyptic world, so they're going to need camo at some point.
That's true. That is true. Okay, so the last scene, which I assume this is the one that you were looking forward to.
Oh my god, this is like Tim Burton directed this scene. Like this bloody like Arkham Asylum, Frankenstein's laboratory ass factory.
Tannhaus Gates. Remember you said it was a reference to
I said the bloody Tannhauser Gates in
way back
Blade
when.
Runner.
Yeah.
This is a
First of all, 1888. You got it.
Bang. Stick that in the back of the net.
Yeah.
Points. Yeah. But I mean, so this is, again, talking about them being referential to the first episode, but developing it. This is such a cool way to expand that frame of reference for like the horror references, because like you've had your John Carpenter and your 80s stuff, and then this is literally like gothic horror the way this is shot. Like the lightning and the rain behind like a big kind of iron wrought gate that says Tannhaus above it, and the laboratory with like the crackling electricity. Like you literally you expect Marta to walk in and whoever's in there to be like, it's alive, like it's so good. And then you get Stranger looking like Nikolai Tesla turning around, like clearly presumably trying to create a portal using the technology at hand, which is, asks all kinds of questions about whether he's going to succeed, or is he the one who actually ends up setting up the technology that will be used in the Sigmundus temple. And then the really interesting thing here is that the way Andreas Pietschmann responds to Marta, it makes me absolutely certain that he never experienced any of what Jonas is going through at the moment.
Which is one of your theories, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely very much feels like that at this point.
Yeah, like who the hell is the Jonas that she met? Like because it wasn't this one. So yeah, I don't know where that's going, but it asks.
Well, the Jonas that she met is the one that we followed in this episode, isn't it? It's obviously going to be the same Jonas, but I mean, at this point, we don't understand how. Like, did he forget about it or what? Like, we saw her meet Jonas for the first time in this episode.
Yeah, but the fact that that's what I mean. The fact that Stranger has no recollection of this happening is like, well, okay, so he never met her, I guess, when he was Jonas's age. So, what's happening?
Yeah.
What's happening, guys? Someone help.
Something's happening. Like, if you didn't think Dark was going to get even more complicated, you think again.
Yeah. Like, someone, I hope Stranger's just lying. That's the big reveal. It's like, oh no, I knew she was there.
Oh, like Enos pops out from around the corner with the sleeping pills.
Gotcha.
Time for bed, Jonas.
Yeah, no, maybe, but yeah, this is. I love this ending. It's just, it's so stylish and so kind of schlocky in a way that I love. that I hope there's more of this. And if the previous seasons are anything to go by, it will kind of revert to a bit more sort of dramatic and slightly less stylized, which I don't mind either. But this was such a great opening to the season.
Yeah. All right, so that was the first episode. Do you want to get into the breakdown?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so the IMDb rating this time is 9. What do you think, Konrad?
I think that's too low. I think this is my favourite episode.
Yeah, you said that to me before we started recording, and I was just like, yes! Because honestly, the further we get into the show, and the more, like, the fact that you still like it, and it's your favourite episode, it makes me so excited, because, like, it makes me really, like, I think you're going to love the ending. Like, based on this being your favourite episode, and, like, there was so much happening in this episode, we were away from a lot of the characters we've been following, and it was still your favourite episode.
Oh, yeah. Like, but, I mean, it's just... This episode had everything. Like, it had great character stuff. Like, we got to see stuff like Alexander with, showing a bit of vulnerability from the death of Regina. We got Ulrich and Hannah, like, showing a different relationship. It had all that great character work. It had Grunge Magnus with his Motley Crue tattoo. It had John Carpenter, the fog references. It had the Stranger doing Frankenstein stuff. It was just amazing. I'm a sucker for presentational stuff, so if there is more like this later on in this season, I will love it. But I think this is probably my favorite episode of the show so far. It flew by.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And this is actually one of the longest so far as well. It's over an hour long. So
was it?
Yeah, most of the episodes this season,
that.
most of the episodes this season are over an hour long, or close to an hour anyway. But yeah, so just unbelievable. Even the fact that most of the characters we're meeting for the first time, but because of the way the show is, you feel like you already know them and you're just seeing a different side to them. It's so interesting. Like, this felt like we talked in the first season about how there was like the pilot, and then there was like a second pilot in episode 3 with the 80s,
yeah.
And then there was a third pilot in episode 8 with the 50s. In my opinion, this feels to me like the fourth pilot of this show.
Yeah, and there definitely is going to be another, like, a bloody fifth one when we do a full episode in 1888 as well. Like, it's coming. Yeah. So, or maybe the 20s, I don't know, but wait
till they go to the saloon.
I want
wake up juice.
I want one of them to walk into the saloon and everyone stop playing like the piano and turn around and look at Stranger because he's wearing like a pink. What does Marty McFly wear? He has got like a pink shirt
and blue
on,
and yellow. Yeah, Doc dresses him like a film star of that day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What do you? Yeah, but do you think that Jonas is going to get into a duel and then have like a cast iron like thing underneath his shirt and survive because the bullet bounces off?
Yeah, I think so. That makes sense. Like he's seen Back to the Future. He knows to try all these things, and it'll come down to him versus the 3 cleanup crew fuckers, and there'll be like a showdown at the OK Corral, and he'll wear iron under his shirt.
He'll be incapacitated, and he'll be on the floor. You'll think, is he dead? But like, no, he turns into Adam. He can't be dead. And then all of a sudden, open up the sombrero, Regina.
Oh yeah, there she is. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, amazing.
What do we say to time? Not today.
And finally, I'll take put some more green in my ledger on the theory matrix, and that one comes true. I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait. All right, well, there we go. Like, this was a lot shorter than normal. I think we're probably gonna have to lengthen it out a bit. Konrad, what do you think about a segment?
Sure, let's do a segment.
I don't know what it is. But when I kiss you, it's like I'm kissing my brother.
All right. This week in Wincest, I have a bone to pick. There was someone who left a comment saying, "What? You didn't do a Wincest segment in episode 8 of season 2 when we found out that Elizabeth was Charlotte's daughter and Charlotte was Elizabeth's daughter?" Now I'm here to explain to you why it's possible that there was absolutely no incest going on. What do you think, Konrad? Is it possible?
think it's unlikely. That's my stance at the moment. I think that sounds pretty incestuous to me.
Right. Okay. So on the screen now, Konrad, you can't see it, but I did send it to you earlier, so you can open it.
You sent it to me earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got it.
So you can see on the screen my potential. Now, obviously, if you listen to this, I'm going to describe what it says. If you listen to the audio podcast, I'm going to describe it, right? But there is a potential for the genetics of these characters to lead to a situation where Noah didn't actually commit technical incest, right? So, this is my thought. If Noah has his X chromosome and his Y chromosome, obviously he's going to give his X chromosome, because if you don't know much about genetics, maybe I should say men have an X and a Y chromosome, and women have an X and an X chromosome. So they have two X's, men have an X and a Y. You need to know that. Okay, lesson over. So Noah can give his X chromosome, represented by red on the chart, can give his X chromosome to Charlotte. Now, from Elizabeth, Charlotte could get a green one. Now, the green X chromosome is actually, I don't know where it came from. It was created through time somehow, right? But if you look at my little chart here, there's a way for Charlotte to get the one from Elizabeth which didn't come from Peter, right? Then what actually happened was Peter and Charlotte, right? Okay, you're getting a little glimpse of what Dark Discussions is now. Just me going off, right?
Jesus.
So Peter and Charlotte have Elizabeth. Elizabeth gets the one from Peter and the green one from Charlotte, right? Okay. So actually, it works. And I'm not going to explain it any more than that.
I mean, good luck getting a court to side with you on that one, is all I'll say.
Can you actually believe that my job is to explain things and teach things to people?
I mean, I think the way you've explained that, it does make sense, and I could believe that genetically speaking, Charlotte does not contain any genetic material
of
Peter.
And Noah does not contain any genetic material of Elizabeth. So it's technically not incest in my representation.
But, I mean, it's still... incest is not confined to
it's dodgy.
What chromosomes you end up with. Yeah, I mean, you're in hot water.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. It is dodgy. I'll admit that.
Yeah, I mean, don't do it. It's not great. You're playing with fire.
Yeah, would not recommend. But that's my Yelp review. Would not recommend incest. Never experienced, but wouldn't recommend. All right, okay.
Like heroin.
Yeah, exactly. I've never done heroin, but yeah, do not do it. All right, guys. Thanks very much for listening / watching this week. I can't wait for next week. Now, we're at the start of what feels like a new journey now. Like this episode, it was obviously setting up a lot of stuff / giving us a lot of new stuff as well. I'm really, really excited to see how Konrad feels about this season. Are you excited, Konrad?
Yes, I am. I'm very excited. Hear the excitement in my voice.
Oh, I can hear it. Oh, someone actually said on a comment the other day that you have a very posh voice.
Posh voice?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's good. My mum will be very pleased to hear that.
Yeah, all that denying you getting things out of the fridge and storing things in the fridge paid off. She
brought me up proper.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, guys, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on podcasting apps. Email us at adpodmail@gmail.com if you want to. Leave comments underneath here for Konrad for episode 2 of season 3. And I think all we have to say is goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the After Dark podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode.